Well, good evening, everybody. My name is Pete Bingham, and I am a real alcoholic. Hope you can hear me okay. Excellent, excellent. Well, I want to start off by saying thank you to Phil for allowing me to be here and to participate in my sobriety. I forget when he contacted me. It must have been months ago, but it's always an honor and a privilege to be anywhere that Alcoholics Anonymous asked me to go, because I wouldn't be here without you guys. I also want to thank Kevin for chairing tonight's meeting. I know that he's one of the sick ones because he's picked a Saturday night meeting to chair, and I know that those are the real ones that come to these meetings on Saturday night. I bring you greetings from Los Angeles. I've had the honor and privilege of being born here and raised here. I think there's 5 of us left in Los Angeles that were actually born and raised. There's 4 of us, and it's a great place to drink, and it's a great place to get sober. I want to welcome, I can't go through all the pages right now here on Hollywood Squares to see who's all here, but in case we have any new folks, I want to welcome you to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I want to urge you and let you know that you never have to drink again if you don't want to. And you never have to drink again if you do want to. And you don't have to hurt yourself anymore. Because when I came to you, I was one of those. I just couldn't stop drinking. That was a lie. I could stop drinking, but I couldn't stay stopped. Let's be honest. I don't know about you, but I tried thousands of times in many different ways of my own making, and it just didn't work until I realized, what I was, and I decided to stick around here one more time to give it a shot. And same goes with with our new folks tonight. Welcome. And in case we have any tweakers in this meeting, stop thinking. Now, I say that because in Los Angeles, we get a lot of tweakers in our meetings. I know it's sacrilege and they've entered through the side door and, but they're here, as well as a lot of young people, heaven forbid, right? But the deal is with us and with my home group, we allow people to stick around until they can find out who they are. Newcomers, think about all the sacrifices and all the prices you paid to get here. For me, I had to literally burn down my whole life. I had to sacrifice practically every relationship I had. I had to get fired a lot. I had to get in trouble a lot with the authorities as well as other things. I had to get acquainted with a lot of lawyers. But more importantly, I had to burn myself down and my self-esteem to get here. And if you be new, I hope you stick around. And if you be an ANDA, maybe, I don't know, maybe a bath salt zombie or, a tweaker or, some of these other things, stick around. Don't let anybody chase you out of here until you at least find out who you are, because there are other programs for that. I know that because I've got extensive general service knowledge, and I'm assuming this is an open meeting with Alcoholics Anonymous, so I'm gonna say that. But again, we are a welcoming organization, and there's over 200 12-step programs, and if this is not the right one for you, I'm sure you'll find one. But we are welcoming, and we want you to stick around until you get here. I also like to mention for the new folks here that I have a sponsor. His name is Jay. He lives in Sedona, Arizona, and he got sober when he was 24 years old. Can you imagine that? He's got 43 years of sobriety now. I got a grand sponsor. His name is Paul C. He's down in San Diego. He's got 47 years of sobriety. He got sober when he was 21. Can you imagine how bad of an alcoholic you got to be if you got to get sober at 21? And my favorite and all-time, just the light of my life, was my great grand sponsor. His name was Harry Homer. Harry's no longer with us, but Harry died with 55 years of sobriety. His sponsor was Jimmy Burwell. He was one of the first 100 in our program, and an atheist to boot. They even let him stick around. But he had the audacity to go to Bill when the monolith in the book was being written and give him the idea that, it'd be really cool if you tempered this verbiage that you've got with a little bit of something like, maybe say something like a God of your own understanding for guys like us that don't really believe in that. Maybe that would help. And Jimmy Burwell was a big guy down in San Diego, and God bless him and God bless Harry. Harry is no longer with us, but man, he was my favorite because He was the Cleveland roofer who cut a hole in the top of a liquor store to rope himself down to get a case of Cutty Sark. I can identify with that kind of alcoholic. Even though I wasn't a big hard drinker guy, hard liquor guy, I identify with that. My sobriety date, because I know the tweakers out there. I know there's some of you out there, and you're trying to do the math. I got 8,865 days. Now, I know that blows your mind because you're trying to figure out how many years that is. So let me do the math for you because I can hear your minds racing right now. I got a little over 24 years. And that's a big deal for a guy like me, man, because I never thought I was going to make this thing. I also I qualified for this program because when I came to you, I had 3 DUIs. I had a wet reckless. I had numerous car crashes. I had just about lost my job. I had lost my marriage. I had lost my first house. And pretty much, you know, when I came to you, I didn't have much to offer. Yeah, when you're getting that many deuces when you're a kid and later on in life, you know, it just is not, it's not real pretty when you're turning 40 and you're still getting in trouble and you're still burning people away. And I was lucky enough to come in when I was about 38 years old after 20 years of drinking. I also qualified for this program because my mom died of this disease. My sister died of this disease. Both of them were about a little over 50 years old. And while my father wasn't an alcoholic, a strange thing happened when he retired. Just like the book said, out came the carpet slippers in a bottle. And within about 15 years, 12 years, he was dead. And I say that because our literature is one of the greatest things that has helped me stick around here, one meeting at a time, one day at a time. You know, early on when I got this sponsor thing you talked about, he implored me to stick my nose into the literature. And one piece of advice that he gave me when I was new was, he says, you know, when you go to a meeting, go to the liquor rack over there and grab a pamphlet, read it, and then bring it back. And keep doing that until you've kind of, you know, secretly gone through our literature that way, because it's in all the meetings usually, and it's valuable free information, and it might help you on your way. And I did that, and I did that early, and I got an appreciation for what I had just signed up for. I was born in the Badlands of Palos Verdes, and I was raised on the mean streets of Fountain Valley. Now, I know I'm almost on the East Coast right now, and a lot of you don't know what Palos Verdes is, or Orange County, or Fountain Valley, but these are two areas that were basically middle class all the way down. It was idyllic in the 60s. I'm currently 64 years old, but back in the 60s, it was just wide open, and it was fun, and it was easy. Of course, I was a kid and I didn't have any responsibilities, but you know, when you grow up in that violent alcoholic home, things tend to be a little bit different for us people. I turned into a lone wolf right away, not just being an only child, but just being kind of walled off. Those of us that grow up in alcoholic homes know that we're not really proud of our surroundings. I couldn't invite you over. I spent a lot of time at my neighbors' houses. I spent a lot of times at my friends' houses because I was ashamed of the way we were living. I didn't know if food was going to be flying. I didn't know if a major fight was going to break out. I didn't know if there's going to be various levels of undress going on between my mom and stepdad at the time. So basically, man, I just went up and I had the sanctuary in my room. Now, I know we got some room dwellers here. We got closet dwellers and under the bed dwellers, and wherever your safe spot was, you know what I'm talking about. Maybe it was the barn. Maybe it was the garage. I don't know. But my room was my little sanctuary because I could go up there, close the door, and kind of wall off what was going on downstairs and the noise and the chaos and all that. I don't know about you, but early on, man, I like to get in trouble. I mean, I'm just ornery that way. And the rule was I had to come in when the street lights came on and have dinner and do my homework. And I was always a pretty decent kid growing up and doing the homework and chores and stuff. But I like to sneak out. And invariably, I started sneaking out of my upstairs window and going out. And invariably, there'd be some of my friends out in the street there under the street light hanging out and in our little middle class neighborhood. And, you know, one time I was down there and they were passing around this bottle. Now, I was 10 years old and by myself. I guess I've been a people person, a people pleaser, actually. And I always wanted to fit in. I always wanted to be one of the fellas and whatnot. And this time, this bottle started going around. And look, I knew about liquor. I knew about beer. I knew about stuff because I see my parents drinking it. And I swore to God that I was never going to drink vodka as long as I lived, man, because, that was always the one vision I got before trouble started happening, especially with my mom. Because I was always the kid that was in the back of the car when she was going to go to the liquor store and when she was going to bounce that check or where she's going to wreck the car on the way over there or something was going to happen. And I was a little burrhead kid rolling around in that back seat when this was going down. And I remember I'm never going to drink like that. I'm never going to touch liquor. That's just, that was the problem. So this night when I'm out there with the fellas and this bottle's going around, they asked me the wrong question. It was going around. They said, "Hey, Pete, do you want some of this?" And I, of course, from that day till this day forward, it seems like I've always had the same answer. Yes. And invariably, all through my drinking and using life, anytime I heard that, "Do you want some of this?" I'd always say yes. And that's the way it started. Now, this first time this bottle is going around, and I know we got a lot of young people on this meeting. You might not remember this part, but in the 60s, there was a kind of a long neck bottle with this amber colored liquid in it. And I took a pull off this thing and had a screw top. So, it was either some really good wine or some kind of beverage. And nothing happened. It tasted a little bit like gasoline, but it had a fruity, kind of a synthetic fruity flavor to it. I didn't know why they were drinking it. It was awful. And the bottle went back around and that night I went on my way. But about a couple of weeks later, I'm sneaking out again. And this time it was kind of a berry flavored, kind of a reddish colored thing. Same kind of bottle, long neck on it, screw top. It was good. And I took a couple pulls on that thing and I started feeling this feeling. It was not profound yet, but it was just a light feeling. And I don't know, fault me for what I was, but you know what? I puked that night. And I don't know if we have any pukers in the meeting. I was not always a puker, but this time I was. And I learned that night that if you drink Strawberry Hill and you puke on your white tennis shoes, it ain't coming off. And my mom found out about it. And that was the first time I got in trouble for drinking. Now, I wasn't even drunk. I hadn't even started on our journey yet. But I know I started taking and putting limitations on what I was going to drink, when I was going to drink, and all that good stuff. But I didn't like it right off the bat. In Fountain Valley, we were near the beach, or we are near the beach. I live in Los Angeles, downtown now, close to downtown. But in those days, I was living a couple miles from the beach. And what we did when I was young is we'd make surfboards in our garages. We were actually one of the biggest manufacturing areas for Infinity surfboards out of Huntington Beach. It was a big board manufacturer in the 70s. And I was a sander. Now, sanders are the least glamorous job that you can have in the process. You always wear a big respirator and you got a hat on and you're covered with dust because you're planing and you're sanding off this fiberglass. And I'll never forget, some of the gifts of working in those environments is you're in a small unventilated room. And, there's certain fumes there. And I used to kind of like, after a while, being in those rooms. And ever since then, I still to this day have a love for the smell of acetone and WD-40. I don't know what it is, but those were like happy times and happy smells for me to this day. And it just freaks me out. One day, working on this big surfboard, one of my heroes came in. His name was Eric Penny. And Eric Penny had just won the Huntington contest, which was the surf championships back, and this was 1971. And Eric would come in and I would be working on his board and he'd always say, "Kid, you really do a good job on my boards. I really appreciate it." And then he asked me that stupid question. You know which question it was? "Do you want some of this?" Being the people pleaser, I'd always say, "You bet." This time was a little different. We went upstairs. He pulled out this thing called a bindle. He pulled out a straw. It went over a candle. It's on a piece of foil. He put that on there. It smoked up. I took the straw. He said, "Hit it." And I took a little hit of this stuff. And I'll tell you, I am an alcoholic. I'm a real alcoholic, just like on page 21. But being 13, 14 years old at this time and having just inhaled this stuff, I got that feeling that a lot of us know. It's more than a sense of ease and comfort. It's a sense of belonging. It's a sense of oneness with the universe, and it's a sense of absolute pleasure. What happened is the feeling started at the top of my head and it went all the way through my arms and down through my body, through my toes. And I started kind of, itching my nose. And I thought, I can do this. Now, I just smoked heroin. Does that make me a drug addict? No. Did I start knocking off liquor stores yet? No, not yet. Not ever, actually. But for this alcoholic, what happened is I chased that feeling again for the next 22 plus years. I was never a big drug guy with hard drugs. That was really the extent of my heroin use, if you want to call it that. But that was my gateway to get on this thing. Now, I knew that drugs were illegal, and I knew that, you don't want to be a drug addict because, it leads to a lot of bad things. But early on, drinking on the beach with the boys after surfing and stuff, the tall cans were the thing to have. And you know what? I cut in with the real elite group, man. This was the connoisseurs. We were drinking this wonderful stuff like Old English 800 and King Cobra. And my favorite that got me till all the end was Mickey's Big Mouth. Now, I know you're all shaking. You're thinking, God, you were drinking the best. Not any automobile that I ever owned wouldn't start unless I had a cold Mickey's Big Mouth between my legs. And from that point on, I was never a bar drinker, but I was a car drinker. Yep. I did everything in my car. You name it. That was my office. That was my playground. That was everything. And that's what started me on my deal with my 3 DUIs and a wet reckless. Over the next 10, 12 years, I racked them up, got in a lot of trouble, could have killed a lot of people, should have killed a lot of people. But, I didn't know about alcoholism. I didn't know what the deal was with it. I couldn't pinpoint it. It was not until going through high school and not until going through college that finally I decided, marriage would be the deal. And I got married in 1990. By 1995, I was bottoming out. Now, during this period between 87 to 95, I was following around this band called the Grateful Dead. Now, in case we have any new folks here on the Zoom, ask your sponsor who the Grateful Dead were. I don't have the time to tell you what was going on at that time, but I'll tell you what. It was the happiest place on earth. And I had a sales job that allowed me to be in any city that they were at. And I had a hotel, I had food per diem, and I had, of course, liquor money. And it was the greatest 3-day weekend you'd ever extend, man. After doing 4 days of sales calls, I was ready for those 3 days. And I chalked up 100 shows within those 12 years. But as all good things, something must come to an end. And on August 9th, 1995, Jerry Garcia died, and I didn't know what I was gonna do. I was also reaching the limit in my marriage, which was gonna end in about 2 weeks. And at that point, she had kicked me out because I was home and drunk all the time, and I was getting in more trouble with the neighbors, and I was unpredictable, and I was gonna kill somebody because I was drinking and driving. I got accepted to the ABC Center out in Indio, California. My dad got me a bed. And at that time, back in the mid 90s, recovery beds were tough at spin drives, but I got myself one. And a funny thing happened. I didn't stay there a long time, but I got a chance. One night, I was there for a while. One night, they put us in the short bus and they drove us up to the meeting. And I remember this guy got up, and I hadn't gone to a lot of actually, I didn't go to any speaker meetings before this. This is my first speaker meeting. And this guy was up at the podium and he looked really sharp. He had a tie on, a suit, and he talked about himself. And he talked about the places he'd been growing up. And it was pretty close to where I lived. He talked about surfing the beaches that I surfed. He talked about the trouble that he got and how it was fun, but then problems started racking up and things kind of accelerated. And then he went to this A&A thing and life got wonderful and he hasn't been in trouble since. Now I thought, what a loser. He should have kept drinking because he could have, passed up all that meeting stuff and kind of kept going. But it got my attention because he'd had some experiences that I had. Now, when I got out of the treatment center and I got my job back because they had put me on a 60-day suspension, I moved out to the Carolinas because they wanted to keep an eye on me. See, at that time, I was working for a company that made titanium and super alloys. And they didn't know if I was going to make it or not because I was kind of the wheel out here in the West Coast, and they brought me back and I started going to meetings. And what I did was I started two-stepping. Now, for the new folks, two-stepping is where you go to meetings, you don't drink, but basically you don't do anything else. You're kind of like around the fences. You're not really in the program. And that lasted for about 3 years. Didn't get a sponsor. I didn't read the big book. Hell no. That's just overrated. Besides, it was written in the 30s and it didn't really pertain to me in my lifestyle then. What happened was my bosses sent me back to California and they said, listen, we need you back there. You know all the customers. Will you be okay? And I said, of course. Shortly thereafter that, a really crazy thing happened. And I think everybody in this room might have an Eskimo, but I had met her. See, I've always liked live music, and I was at this concert called the Hootenanny. It was out at Irvine Lake. All my favorite bands were playing there. Billy Zoom from X had his own band there. The Cramps were playing there. Social Distortion, Reverend Horton Heat, and this was in the late 90s. But I met her. You know the one. About 5'7", dark hair, kind of goth looking. That's my style. She wasn't drinking. I didn't really notice it, but she wasn't drinking. I wasn't drinking then, because I knew I couldn't. We started dating. Then the bad things happened about the third date. We were at a really nice restaurant out in Santa Monica, and right in the middle of dinner, she goes, Pete, I noticed you're not drinking. Are you in Alcoholics Anonymous? And of course I said, being the liar and the cheat, yeah, I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. She goes, that's great. Well, I've got 12 years under my belt here. And a funny thing is I've never heard you talk about having a home group. Now, my mind starts opening up saying, wow, what the hell, why is she going there? And then she says, I've never heard you talk about having a sponsor. And my mind says, does she realize that I'm buying dinner? And then she goes right to it. She goes, Pete, it's painfully evident you're not in Alcoholics Anonymous. You're around it, but you're not in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I usually don't date guys in AA unless they've done a 5th step or a sexual inventory. Now, look, this is a program of attraction, and I wanted what she had. So the next night, I bopped down to this men's stag, and I've never left. My home group is the Hermosa Beach Men's Stag. It meets on Monday night at 8:30 in the Hermosa Beach Alano Club. If you be male and alcoholic, come on in. I'm also a regular member of the Roxbury Men's Group of Beverly Hills. I've also been a regular member of the meditation group of Manhattan Beach. It's called the 11th step meeting there on Manhattan. And those 3 meetings have kept me in good stead my entire sobriety. Because that sponsor that I've had my entire sobriety had gone to all those meetings, and he was a good sponsor because when I came in and asked for the help, which so far has been the hardest thing I've ever had to do in AA, was ask another man for help. He sized me up and he got the meeting directory right away, and he circled these meetings and he said, I suggest these are the ones you go to. And it's particularly the Beverly Hills meeting was really, really important because it takes a long time to get there from where we lived in the South Bay. But that quality time that we had in the car, he and I, that's where I got a relationship with another man who has never lied to me. He's never gotten over on me. He's never borrowed money, never paid me back. He's done all these things that I didn't think other guys were even capable of doing, let alone myself. But he was the one that got me on this journey really hard because he made this thing attractive. Tuesday night was my time in his front room, and here I am, this 40-year-old balding, somewhat overweight guy going to AA as a newcomer. I didn't have any self-esteem. I didn't have much pride. I didn't have much of anything. But he allowed me to come to his house one night a week to do these things, and I started going to meetings with him. And Jay and I went to meetings. We went to a minimum of 3 meetings a week for 15 years. And I am so grateful. I don't know how I'll ever pay that man back. But one thing he always implored me to do was always say yes when somebody in this program asked for help. Let me tell you a couple stories about early sobriety. First guy I ever sponsored. Now, I used to like to go to this meeting. It was called the Rodeo meeting. It was on a Friday night in Beverly Hills. I love to watch strippers and actors try to get sober. And here I am with my 1 year of sobriety. I just finished the steps and I'm going to this meeting. I'm there every Friday. This guy comes up and I'm walking out to my car and he goes, "Hey, excuse me, can I talk to you for a second?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "Listen, I've seen you here before. You look like you're having a good time because you're always smiling and you're always you're laughing and you got a crew with you. And by the way, for all the new folks, get yourself a crew. I've always had a wingman. I've always had a posse. And, you know, those are the people you can tell the truth to when you don't want to really tell it to your sponsor right off the bat." And I'm grateful because, you know, we've had some incredible moments, the crew and I and the wingman and everything. And it rubs off because people see you having a good time in the meetings. And they're wondering, what's up with that? My friend Sandy Beach always said, act as if you're the only what was it? The only non-pretentious guy in the room, the most adjusted person in the room. Sorry, that's what he said. And apparently we kind of look like that because we were attractive to some people. Anyway, this guy comes up and he goes, "I need some help. Will you sponsor me?" Now, I had just finished the steps. But of course, out of my mouth, because my sponsor has always drilled it into me, just say yes. What do you think I said? I said, "Yes, of course I will. Give me your phone number. Here's my number. I'll call you tomorrow. Let's do this." Now, I immediately got on the phone and called Jay and I said, "Listen, you're not going to believe this. Some guy just asked me for help." And I'm like, I don't know if I can do it. Jay goes, "Well, what'd you say?" I said, "Well, yes, I said yes, of course." He goes, "Well, what's the problem?" I said, "Listen, this guy's gay. I don't know anything about being gay. I don't know anything about being homosexual. I don't know what that's about." And he stopped me right there and he said, "Listen, Trick, your job around here is to take him through the steps, implore him to stick around, be his friend, and be a good example. He knows how to be gay." Love and tolerance is our code. It didn't feel like it at the time, but Jay gave me the permission to do something that I didn't really want to do. And I'm here to say that this thing about just saying yes and having the experience, I fully believe that AA is an experiential program. At least it's been for me. There's been a lot of things that I haven't wanted to do, but I've just said yes to. And I've had some good experience, mostly good experiences. And I have some experiences that I didn't find, you know, what does this have to do with not drinking? But I did them anyway. And so far, that ideology of just saying yes around here has given me a wonderful life, among other things. At the end of 1999, when I was finishing my steps, my sponsor came to me and he said, "Give me $200. Now I thought, okay, here we go. Any of you guys ever been to Hollywood or Los Angeles? There's a lot of different meetings around. There's the women's meetings where they all have the same coach bags. There's the actors meetings. There's the musicians meetings that meet above the rainbow. There's all these little things, you know, so you could be different. There's the Pacific group you can go to. You can go to all these other things. And I found it interesting. I thought, okay, this guy wants me to start giving him money. He's going to keep me sober. So I gave it to him and I waited. Now, about 2 months later, he goes, "Hey, Pete, are you curious what I did with your $200? And I said, "Yeah, I'd love to know." He said, "I enrolled you in the lottery for housing for the next international convention that's coming up. It's going to be in Minneapolis next year in 2000. I suggest you go." Now, I'm a newcomer in AA. My mind told me I don't have the desire. I don't really have the money to go to Minneapolis from LA. And, you know, I don't have the time. I'm trying to get my job back. But out of my mouth, I just said yes. And I had a good time. Now, you know better than anybody over there, Minneapolis has got a great covered dome stadium. It's where they play baseball games there. And the international convention was absolutely incredible in the year 2000. For this alcoholic, though, the time came at the end of the big meeting in the stadium. There was 55,000 people in the stadium, and we were kind of about halfway back in on the upper deck, and I was looking down. Now, just like at the end of all the silly meetings that we're going to in AA, they start saying that prayer. I've never really been a big God guy, but I was, acting as if, as they say, and I was slowly seeing the coincidences and the weird things, the serendipity that happens and things. And I've done my steps, and I'm sponsoring now, and I'm doing some things. But at that meeting, we got up and we held hands and we said the Serenity Prayer. Now, I don't know about you, but I described that sensation of when I smoked that heroin that time and the feeling that came over me. Well, this time I got it from doing this prayer. This sensation went down my arm, went around my back. Whatever hair I had left was standing up on end. It went around this side. And what happened was I saw you. I saw the Worldwide Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. And a small voice came to me and said, how can this be wrong? Why are all these people here? Why did all these people come from the four corners of the earth? And I didn't have an answer for it. I didn't have a negative answer for it. And what happened was I got back to my home group, and I've leaned into this thing with every fiber of my being since that time. I was even so struck that I asked to be the GSR of my meeting. Now, you know me, I'm a renegade and I'm a gangster. So I asked to be a GSR when I only had a year and a half of sobriety. That's against the law in AA. You have to have 2 years. But no, I had to do that because, one, I wondered what my sponsor had, and he had done general service. And two, I wanted to be different and unique, and I wanted to find out how this thing really worked. I'm happy to report 9 years after that, I'd rotated out of the area level, and I'd held several different commitments and positions there. But my favorites, obviously, were always to be the DCMs of meetings. And for all the men's groups, I knew every men's group in my town. Whenever I traveled for business, I knew every men's stag that it was offered in the meeting directory when I was on business. My favorite meeting hall is in Gresham, Oregon. They've got a thing on their meeting wall. It's a bunch of bricks that you can buy, to keep the funds up there at the club. But there's a little sign that says, "We don't care how you do it in California." That was my favorite. And I'll tell you, every time I came to the men's meeting, I'd always walk in there, and if I ever got a chance to share, I'd point at that and say, "I'm here." And they would laugh because they knew that I was passionate about this thing, and I was on business, and I'm a traveling alcoholic, and they loved to get the reports from California. One of the greatest things for me that's kept me here is obviously sponsorship. Yes, I've had to change just about everything about me except my last name to stay here. I've gotten rid of friends, old friends, lower companions, all kinds of things, but I've been a seeker. And thank God that my sponsor was into history and that he was into the backbone of our fellowship and all of the things that have gone on prior to us. And I have an extensive collection of first editions that go all the way back to Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob and all of the first Christian things that they were teaching their youngsters when this thing was brand new. And all about meditation and getting quiet and all the good things that are basically our tenets of this thing. And it's an amazing thing when you have reverence for what this thing really is, this thing we call Alcoholics Anonymous. I absolutely love it. What's going on today? Well, I'm 64 years old. I got to retire from that job that almost fired me. I was with ATI for 33 and a half years, and they stuck by me. The weird thing about that is not necessarily being there that long, because I know that's kind of rare these days, but I was the guy that was in trouble. I was the guy that was a risk. And what happened was in the end, they were sending people to me if they had a drinking problem, even if it was in the Carolinas or wherever, just so I could be an advocate for the company that this thing is possible, that you can get sober. I was not that guy. But things happen when you stick around and you become visible and you become something attractive. I don't know why I was the guy basically to break the chain in my family, because it really shouldn't have happened. We should have all gone down in flames. But there's something about this way of life. You know, the meeting, when it talks about serenity improvement, I've always hung with guys that talked about serenity and who live serenity. You know, I always implore guys, hey, if you don't like this meeting, there's plenty of meetings to go to. There's thousands in Los Angeles, and they're big meetings. Find one where you look around and the guys are smiling and the women are laughing and they're talking and everybody in there is having a good time. This is our life from here on out. Doesn't have to be drudgery. And the payoff of this thing is that it works. This is the only thing that I know that can work. You see, I have a fatal progressive illness, this alcoholism. And out here, when somebody dies, we usually always go to their memorial. And you know what they do? They pass out those Topps trading cards, the little cards with the bio on there. Since the 24 years that I've been here plus, I got a stack of Topps trading cards about that big. Not everybody gets to stick around. Not everybody gets to live after this thing if you don't stick around. If you've gone out and you've come back, I want to thank you. You've given us some reconnaissance that some of us maybe every now and then wonder about if it's still going on out there, if it's different. And so far from my experience, nobody has come back saying, oh, Pete, you're missing it. There's Jägermeister flowing down the gutters. There's free vodka everywhere. Happy hour goes on forever. Nobody gets in trouble. That's not my experience. For me, this is a gift to be able to stick around here and actually live comfortably with some kind of serenity. And it's because of the meetings. It's because of you guys. It's because of meetings like this. And it's because of the steps, traditions, and the literature. There is something that runs this thing, and I always avoided it. Growing up as a kid, my parents were atheists and agnostics. Growing up, my dad used to invite Latter-day Saints and Jehovah's Witnesses into our house and stick them on the couch and grill them. Because religion and faith was always a weakness. It was always a crutch. And I saw that growing up, and I knew that, that was my upbringing. But I'm here to report that in Alcoholics Anonymous, you get to choose whatever inspiration, higher power, direction, czar of the heavens that you want to do. And that's what makes this thing different than a lot of religions and a lot of other things. Religion is great. Therapy is encouraged. But thank God, guys like Jimmy Burwell were here early on saying, letting our co-founders write something that made it a little bit, allowed other guys to be drawn in that might have a God problem or might have a spirituality problem. Thank God for those guys. Thank God for the seekers that I run with today. We are not scared about talking about, serenity. We're not scared about talking about spirituality because this is a spiritual program and it saves lives one at a time, meeting by meeting. If you're here, you've got a story, and you've got a story that can and will save somebody else. You see, I firmly believe that there's somebody out there right now that only you can help, that only you can sponsor. There's sometimes there's a little bit of a stream of people that say, well, I'm not good at sponsorship. I don't really sponsor. I wouldn't be here unless I had that. Sponsorship has been the greatest entertainment value of this program that I've ever had. For $5 in a basket and being able to help somebody, has been just an indescribable pleasure. We had a guy out here named Cliff Roach who used to talk about the 5 minutes that he would get of serenity after he'd go into his car and break out that glove box vodka. You remember that, the warm one? Take a couple pulls on that, and for the next 5 minutes, you got that relief. I'll tell you what, the 5 minutes after I'm done with the guy, after we're done reading and I get his report, or if it's on the phone and he calls me, that 5 minutes after that, that's a wonderful joy. I hope all of you guys get to experience and continue to experience, because we can only help somebody if they ask for help. And like I said, that was the hardest thing I've ever had to do. This thing gets better. I promise you. I have not been in the back of a cop car. I've not been in a courtroom. I've not had to hire a lawyer since I quit drinking. And for me, that's a big deal. Keep coming back. This thing works if you work it. The dirty secret of Alcoholics Anonymous is you got nothing to lose by doing this thing. Give us a year, give us 52 weeks. If you don't like it and it's not working for you, we will gladly refund your misery. I know you've all heard that and that's old hat, but it's so, so true. This thing will work if you work it. Stick around. Miracles happen and it could be you. Thanks for letting me share.